Yo. Hey you guys, it's another Tuesday, so we're back to getting healthy with Dr. G, except for Bob. Bob's not doing so well. He would not take my advice, so that's on him. So today we're going to talk about parasites, and I'll repeat this a couple times as you guys come on board here. And we want to thank, so it was Carrie McDowell, who actually said that we should watch or talk about Parasites today, and then also Sean Dill and Scott Graber. I can't talk. Scott Graber had mentioned Parasites too, so that became our topic for this week. So, as you guys know, I'm Dr. Patrick Garrett. I have a functional lifestyle medicine practice in Wichita, Kansas, and actually have patients from all over the world that end up here, which is kind of interesting because it's just a small little clinic, but we treat people from all over the world. I have 4 postdoctoral diplomates in functional medicine, clinical nutrition, integrated medicine, 2 in clinical nutrition, and did most of my postdoc continuing education through Harvard Medical School's lifestyle medicine program, and also through Yale. And I love their program because it was the first program where it was patient has this condition, and what are they doing to cause that condition? How do we reverse it? And the Harvard program for lifestyle medicine was so incredible that it literally changed the way that I practice. So now the focus is always, how do the healthiest and happiest countries work, and let's just do those things. So instead of kind of like masking things and and then chronically managing them, we just want to fix them, right? And the easiest, cheapest way is to stop causing them. And Dan, I know, it sounds like I'm bragging, but maybe I am, I don't know. That's why I have my wall of plaques, so I don't ever have to say anything. But as I said before, I'm a pretty big nerd with this, so hey Leah, good to have you on. And as you guys come on, we're talking about parasites today. I have a lot of different facts, and hopefully if we can make one person throw up during this episode, I think we'll achieve our goal. And then we'll talk about treatments and tests and those kind of things for parasites. So I wanted to thank Carrie for suggesting this. And as we go through this, if you guys have an idea for a topic next week, let me know. There's a couple ideas that I have, but I really want the feedback from you guys. So really the idea of this show is to have a little bit of interaction. So as you guys have questions, we've done, I think, 70-something videos, so I don't mind recycling topics. Like we did inflammation again, and so I try to address other things that weren't addressed before. And last week we had over 1,000 views, and we had 18 shares and 157 comments, except some of the comments were all over the place. So, and some of them I weren't sure if people were messing with me or whether it was true. Or like, you can't, they need a sarcastic button on there. So when people are like, hey, benzenes are awesome, like, are they being sarcastic or are they being real? Do I need to comment on that? I don't know. So, hey Christy, hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining the show. Alright, so we had a lot of good feedback on the chemicals that were in all the vaccines, and we had lots of good feedback on the ones for basically supplements. So as we went through those, I hope that was really helpful for you guys. So now we're going to talk about the most disgusting topic ever, which typically leads to, between this and irritable bowel and Crohn's, people end up bringing pictures of their poop into the office, which is awesome. So it's a pretty glamorous job, you know. All right, so parasites. I looked up a bunch of facts for you guys, and we'll talk about these. But so parasites, those are basically things that live off you. So you have those like a tick on a dog, basically lives off the dog. But there's parasites inside the tick that then feed off what the tick feeds off of. They're the most common life form on Earth. Now, there's more viruses than there are parasites, but viruses are not living things. They're just these little genetic packages that are designed to screw up your genetic package, just like a virus for a computer. But it said 80% of all living things are parasitic. So 20% of things are out there like living their lives, and then the 80% are sucking the life out of those 20%. I think, yeah, we'll talk about that more. But U.S. National Parasite Collection in Maryland. When I lived in Maryland, I didn't know about that place. That'd be a sucky building for them to blow up, man. All those parasites everywhere. So they have over 1 million parasitic species, or specimens. So over 1 million. That's crazy. So that's a lot of them. And I was very surprised about how many there work, because typically when we think about like parasites with patients, it's only like a handful of things that we typically think about. So, in fact, Brianna, thank you for the tomatoes. That was very nice. She brought me vine-ripened tomatoes, I think. Or they're store-bought tomatoes that look like they're from a farm. So that's very nice of you. Thank you so much. What foods can introduce parasites into the body? So that's a great question there. Does anybody want to guess the number one food that's probably going to be the most well known for parasitic introduction in the body? Organic. The monsters inside you. So yeah, Dan, it'll get worse. Yeah, pork. So in tropical medicine, they actually take strips of pork to get the parasites out of people, and then they throw it in the fire. And then all the Americans are like, bacon! They try to eat it. So that's why you can't have medium rare pork, is because not only are there parasites, but there are also going to be eggs in there. And some of those eggs are heat resistant, and so then you end up with a parasitic infection. In fact, you got to Google this. It's real because it's on the internet, but it's actually on like ABC News. But this woman had thought she had cancer. The doctors thought she had cancer, and so she was having all these kind of weird symptoms. So they went in to basically do exploratory surgery to kind of look in there and figure out where the cancer is and what they need to do about it. And the video, you can see the video inside the brain. And as he's moving around tissue, all of a sudden you see something move real quick. And it was like, oh my God, just like Alien, right? And then he takes his forceps and he clamps onto it, or hemostat, probably hemostats, and he pulls out this long worm out of her brain. And it's called a fluke, which is a flatworm. And so she didn't have cancer, it ended up just being a flatworm. And he said basically, or most likely, she just got it from pork. And it then went up through her body all the way to her brain. And then the brain is fat, and so it's one of the most nutrient-dense or calorie-dense products that the body has. So they love the brain. Love it. So... still doesn't persuade people to stop eating pork. And they say, like, the CDC says that 1 out of 2 Americans is carrying a parasitic worm. 1 out of every 2 Americans. 1 out of every 2. So, if you're married, you gotta look at your spouse, and one of you guys are carrying a parasite. And every time you guys share stuff, you're likely to spread that parasite. So that's awesome. So, interestingly enough, parasitos is the Greek word. I said it with a nice little Hispanic flair there, a little Mexican accent, but kind of like pobrecita, like Mama Padilla says, and Sonia calls it pobrecita, yeah. So, parasito is the Greek name for parasite, and what was interesting was actually they said that there used to be this practice where they would have rich people bring in poor people and then let the poor people eat with them, but only if they praised them and like gave them lots of acknowledgement. And so they called them parasites, which means beside the food. And so the people that would eat next to the rich people were parasites. And then later, once we had a microscope, then we could figure out all these other parasites, and then it took on a different form. But it's also the same kind of idea for freeloader. That's where we get that term. Or nitpicker, you know. So, Brianna has a good question, and I just found this answer out last year. But are there parasites that aren't harmful? And that's true, there are. So something like there's very benign ones that really don't do any harm. Think about like the fish that go in between the shark's teeth and basically are cleaning them all the time. That's some of the parasites do that for us and help us. So we used to think, and I was taught this in grad schools too, is basically all bacteria is bad, all viruses are bad, all parasites are bad. But the reality of it is just there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria. There's good viruses, there's bad viruses. And there's good parasites. So last year they started talking about, I think it was Harvard, was talking about that we have these good parasites. And like a bacteriophage is pretty awesome too. But, you know, it's interesting because I'm kind of mad, like all the stuff I learned in school, I think they're screwing us. Like a tomato is a fruit, not a vegetable. Like, starting to think that I was lied to a lot in school. Let's see what Jessica said. She just shared it. Oh yeah, Christy. Like pork is close to human flesh. Pork is also called long pig, or humans called long pig, because it's the meat that tastes closest to human. So if you eat pork, you can transition to a cannibal very easily. Very easily. In fact, if you really like pork rinds, basically it's like eating human flesh. Or at least that's what they say. Who the hell knows this stuff, right? Who's the test group? Probably New Guineans. Alright, so humans have hundreds to thousands of different types of parasites that live in them and on them. Right? And so while there's several hundred species that we really know about, the expectation is as we get better and better at identifying these, that number's just going to blow up. So they're excited, you know, if you're a parasitologist. And a few kind of facts that was interesting is tapeworms, which most of you guys know. Like, you have that kind of shows where people buy a tapeworm to get skinny, but tapeworms will not make you skinny. They will make you sick and malnourished, but they won't make you skinny. And so you think about, there's more obese Americans than overweight Americans. And so this idea that you're going to get this tiny little thin worm, you know, even if it's like 30 feet long, it's not going to consume the amount of calories it takes to make someone overweight in America. So that's a big myth. So parasites will not make you, or at least a tapeworm won't make you thin. And I had a patient once with that, and really it's interesting because it does still basic nutrition, not really calorie nutrition. And so what people tend to do is they tend to be really hungry and they eat a lot and a lot and a lot. And the patient that I had was from Arc City. She like drove all the way up here and had to stop like 3 or 4 times to eat. And so it was like, you probably have a parasite. And then she got tested and she got parasites from her dog. And then she got treated, the dog got treated, but it almost killed her. It seemed like it was a terrible, terrible, because they went the medical route for just, they did MRI and then they just started on the med. And holy crap, she was just wanted to die. It was so bad. So, Brianna, that's a good question. Are the good parasites helping get rid of the bad parasites? And I don't know the specific answer to that. So, 70 shows later, I don't know an answer. So I've done pretty good so far. I would suppose so, because I mean, like bacteriophages eat other bacteria, and that it's like a viral thing that kills bacteria. Where, you know, good bacteria, they create this kind of microbiota that helps prevent the bad bacteria from even establishing in the good in the colon or the small intestine. So I'd assume parasites would do about the same thing. So that's a great question. I have to look that up. So I'll make a note. And also, as I go back through, I'll ask all the questions you want, you guys, and most of them I'll try to answer as we go through this. But if I don't, I'll go back through over the next week and start answering things. So if I have to look stuff up like that for Brianna, then we'll figure out the answer, because I should know this stuff, right? It's all learning. Man, there's so much stuff. Like, I was very surprised with the parasites of how much stuff I was not aware of. Because typically when you think of patients with parasites, you think of, like, 5 or 6 things, and that's all they really test for is, a handful of things. And there's like hundreds, if not thousands, of things. So you cannot starve a tapeworm, but you can irritate the hell out of it. Now we'll talk about a bunch of remedies that are great, and a few that we've used in practice. But garlic and onions irritate the hell out of tapeworms. And Christy, I'm trying to reach yours as you post here. They say that heavy metals are surrounded by candida or yeast. I wouldn't think so much that. Heavy metals like that you ingest, like mercury and stuff? Or what are you trying to say? Oh, it's the same one too. And really, I mean, this is the thing. Like, when I used to teach this 300-hour postdoctoral diplomate program, there would be interesting conversations with other doctors. And, one of the things is candida is a normal yeast that lives in our gut. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only when it's overgrown that it's a bad thing. Same thing with, like, a lot of the H. pylori. That's a normal bacteria. It's overgrowth that becomes the problem. Hey, Deb. So the overgrowth then creates the toxicity. But even with good bacteria, it can cause that problem. There's 3 types of parasites. Typically, when I think parasite, I only think worm. And let's see, Christy. Okay, so oh, that's the same one. All right. I only think of, like, the worms. But there's 3 types of parasites. So protozoas, and those are like trichomoniasis, which is like an STD, or giardia, which is like the most common cause of, like, hiker's diarrhea. So those are single cell microorganisms, right? So they're one cell. They go around and they have a parasitic relationship with people. And then you have hemolyths or helminths, and those are worms. So those are the ones I typically think about when I think parasites. And that's probably what you guys think when you think about parasites. And then there's arthropods, and those are the bugs. And the bugs aren't parasites, like ticks and fleas. They're not parasites, but they have parasites in them that then feed off of that. One of the coolest parasitic things is the parasite that makes ants into zombies. That's really cool. And so those are parasites that live into it. And there's also what are called hyperparasites. And hyperparasites are parasites that live inside of parasites. So you have a parasite that has a parasite that's parasitic, and so it's like double parasitic. Is that a thing? It doesn't sound right. It's like a double whopper of parasites. Hey, Jan, glad you're joining us from El Dorado. All right, some other cool things here. Humans host about 300 species of parasitic worms. So, when you talk about, do I have a parasite, there could be 300 just worms that you can have. Now, that's going to range differently based on where you are in the world. And we'll talk about some of the more common things like pinworm. What is that, like 30% of all children in the United States have pinworm? So that's awesome. And you do a Scotch tape test to figure out if they do. So basically, you take Scotch tape and you put it across their anus, and then you look at it and you look for those little tiny, like, fibers of worms on there. You can see them. And at night, if I remember right, I believe they live in the cecum, which is where the small intestine and the large intestine connect. And then it'll travel all the way through those 9 feet of your large intestine. And then it'll dump like 15,000 eggs or more into your rectal area, so that way you can spread it to everybody in the family. family that spreads parasites, it's all love at that point. So Brianna says, my daughter is from Colombia, and the doctors give them a dewormer yearly. Yeah, that's what they should have with bacon. They should have a dewormer with bacon. So I have a BLT with the side of wormwood. And of course, Dan, how I always make drug references. Dan always makes liquor references. And moonshine kills parasites. Probably does. We should find out. I think this is a good study. We should. I think we'll get plenty of participants. There's a type of parasite that lives in eyes. So sometimes people might see like a little worm inside the eye. And then sometimes as it goes past the lens, they might see the actual worm in there. So that's kind of freaky. But they can live up to 17 years inside your eyeball. And a lot of them will feed off like the retina, which is nutrient dense, and then the person goes blind, which is a pretty common cause. And then hookworms, they can live up to 15 years and feed upon you. So you can have a worm inside you. Well, a hookworm, 15 years, that's not very long. If you compare it to like a tapeworm can live up to 30 years inside you. 30 years. That's pretty awesome. And I think the longest tapeworm, so 30 years, the longest tapeworm was 37 feet long. So, that's pretty awesome. That's good bragging rights, right? So, Jackie, that's a great question. So, at the end, I'm going to talk about some really disgusting facts, but then at the end, we'll talk about the nutritional treatments. And they're pretty straightforward. I mean, there's lots of different ones, but we'll talk about probably, what is it, the top 13, and then we'll talk about ones that we use that were simple in practice that worked very well. I'm just trying to gross you guys out, see if we can make someone throw up. 37-foot worm. Man. Wonder how thick that was, though. That was in 2001. And then toxoplasmosis, which most of you guys, if you had a baby before, they'd say, stay away from the litter box. Because typically things go orally through food that's contaminated with fecal matter, then to the feces, and then that contaminates and spreads the parasites. But toxoplasmosis is the most common cat parasite, but when it's then transferred to humans, it can cause like ADHD, it can cause schizophrenia, it can cause learning disorders. What else? Even suicidal behaviors in humans. The freaking cats. You don't hear about no dog toxoplasmosis. They just have heartworms that then kill you. So, I have 2 cats at home. Oh, so you know what you do though? Okay, so for the cats, you'd want to give them diatomaceous earth. And so you put that, so I gotta get some diatomaceous earth for my cats, so I don't get toxoplasmosis and start getting all schizophrenic and ADD on you guys. And OCD, same thing. So we'll talk about that one at the end, because that's a great one for pets, is diatomaceous earth, that's food grade. And this is beautiful. So, 9 to 10-year-old girls are the most likely to get head lice. And does anybody know why? So why are 9 to 10-year-old girls most likely to get head lice? And I'll go on, but you guys got to answer. Someone's got to answer this. Brianna says, what, heartworms transfer from dogs? Yeah, they do. But I don't think they cause heartworms in humans. I think they just infect the bowel. I might be wrong about that, though. Alright, so the question is, why do 9 to 10-year-olds lead the way for head lice? And the treatment for head lice used to be... so that's good, Brianna. And Jackie, same. Yep, Deb, that's good. So, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, the old treatment for head lice used to be Lidane, which is horribly toxic. And so people were putting this stuff on kids, and it was just terrible, terrible, terrible chemical. So then they switched to permethrin. So now they actually use essential oil derived from chrysanthemum flowers to actually kill head lice. So it's perfectly safe. Perfectly safe. So just like everybody else, our girls end up getting head lice at camp. And we were so, it's that embarrassment of like, oh my God, my kids have a head lice. And then you got to call other parents because you're just like, well, they were in the same cabin and like, did my kids spread the head lice or did someone give it to them? And then come to find out, everybody in that cabin had head lice. So all our friends had the same thing. So yeah, Jackie, hats and sleepover. So the most common way is group hugs. So group hugs, but I bet you anything. I mean, what Jackie and Deb, what you guys are saying too, and Brianna, I'm sure they share those things and the scrunchies and using each other's hairbrushes. Absolutely, that's going to be a vector for a transmission of those head lice. But group hugs is supposed to be the main way that, according to research. Then you have things like Lyme disease. Now, Lyme disease is really interesting because if you get it tested and it's negative, it could still be positive. If you get it tested for positive, it may not be positive. And that's because once that parasite's released into the body from the bite, it then you have like the direct infection of the skin. You also have a blood infection, and then you have a neurological infection. And what happens is there's different ways to treat each one. So there's a great research article, I think it's maybe from the Journal of Alternative Medicine or something like that. But it actually looked at, here's the drugs that we use for this leg of the infection. Here's all the supplements or herbs that are effective as the drugs for that. And so basically the way that you want to address Lyme is really not one size fits all. You really want to look at what stage is that infection in, and maybe it's multiple stages, but that's what you want to address it as. You want to be very targeted in that approach because you don't want to mess around with Lyme. You don't want to let that go on. But what I see most patients getting from most docs is this one size fits all approach, and it's not the most research-based best practices. So, and a lot of times it's very gimmicky, and it's more about the hustle. And that pisses me off. So, Suzanne says, I had a tick bite that was, that you took antibiotics, felt symptoms. My dog vets had the same thing. Well, one of the best tick bites you could ever get is from a Lone Star tick, because it'll react to a protein that's in meat, and it'll make you violently ill every time you eat meat, and you become a vegetarian. See that? Then you gotta grow dreadlocks, and then start smelling like patchouli. Start composting your own poop, This is interesting. Most all humans have follicle mites on them. So we already said, like, humans are riddled with all kinds of parasites, but not the roundworm type. That's usually 1 out of every 2 people. And another thing that's interesting is parasites, since they mess with your immune system, they actually are doing parasitic therapy where they get people to ingest parasites to then lower the reaction to things like hay fever. So they're using parasites to mess with your immune system so you don't have allergies. But the parasites will cause allergies. So it's ridiculous. You're better off just lowering histamine through like SAMe or IgG foods and stuff like that, not ingesting parasites. It's just like the idea of fecal transplants. I'm going to take your poo, shove it in someone else's poo, and that's way better than probiotics, right? And Ascaris is one of the coolest parasites. Ascaris will shoot out of your butt like confetti. So that's the funnest one. Pinworms will come out, especially at night. They'll like go out and get on your underwear and bedding, and then you got to wash every possible thing you have. But Ascaris is like a butt confetti. So that's awesome. It's like a party for your pants. And then flatworms, called flukes, lead to liver cancer, liver and kidney failure, infertility, bladder cancer. So that's nice. I mean, almost all these, when you, any of those websites, you're like, well, could I have a parasite? And they list every possible symptom, and what you find out is, yeah, it kind of can be anything. Like, that's the ridiculous part. Is literally, pretty much any symptom could be related to a parasite. And truthfully, it can. But it doesn't always become very helpful either. So Brianna says, oh, hey, Jess. Brianna says, follicle mites, would that start out as a skin rash and turn to contact dermatitis? No, because, I mean, not necessarily, because those are things your body is completely used to. Now, if you get, like, follicle mites from a cat or a dog or something like that, maybe. But your ones that live on you are this symbiotic kind of relationship where they're, like, cleaning you up and eating your skin cells and debris, and then you're feeding them. So it's kind of like a living relationship. Then there's a really great one called, was it Naegleria filaria amoeba? Say that 3 times. And that one's called the brain-eating amoeba. So that's really badass. And the symptoms, of course, are things that you probably think you probably already have, right? But in the end, people die within 3 to 7 days. So it's too late. We don't have it here, really. Peutz-Jeghers is kind of what we'd have here in the U.S., and that's the one that leads to, like, mad cow disease. And then they kill the cows and they feed them to the other cows with that, I think it's spongiform, and then they end up infecting all the cows, and then that's a whole mess. That was like a decade ago that happened in the U.S. Hookworms can consume up to 2 milliliters of blood per week. So that's great. Little blood suckers. And then okay, so this, you guys ready to get grossed out? Brianna, you ready? 1 square foot of carpet has over 10,000 dust mites. 1 square foot of carpet, 10,000 dust mites. But your mattress has between 100,000 to 10 million mites on there. So when you guys go to sleep tonight, think of me and think about all those millions of mites crawling on you, cleaning your body. Well, that actually sounds nice. You should put some extra food out for them, you know? That's what you should do. And then we talked about hyperparasites. So there's two more really interesting things here. Ringworm and someone mentioned that earlier, but that's a parasitic infection that's a fungus. So that's a really unique kind of thing. And fungal ones we'll talk about. Those are pretty simple solutions. Hookworms can produce 217 million eggs per day. So that's one of those things when we talk about testing, right? So with testing, Jackie, you're not going to sleep again. But they're already on you, Jackie. They're all over. So, yeah, don't sleep in a hotel. I know. So, so testing. How do you test for these things, right? So typically what you want to find is like debris from the parasites. You want to find eggs from the parasites. But certain parasites come out at different times. So like a full moon is usually the best time for parasites to come out. And they get all crazy. I saw this video where this person had parasites on their face. But I think they were like, if they slapped the face or something like that, they created a vibration that the parasites started coming out. It was the craziest thing ever. So that person needs to wrap their face in bacon and get rid of that. Otherwise, they're pretty covert. And so when you do a fecal test, so typically for parasites, if they're involving the blood and your immune system, then eosinophils will be elevated. And you have neutrophils that fight bacteria, you have lymphocytes that fight viruses, you have monocytes, which are kind of the janitors that clean up after infections, and then you have basophils, which are more like IgE kind of reactions, like peanut allergies. And then you have eosinophils. And eosinophils typically are higher for for parasites. Not always, but typically. So, that you have to do a blood test for. But even if it's negative, it doesn't mean that you don't have parasites. And the question we asked in the very beginning is, how do I know if I have parasites? Yeah, you probably have parasites. Everybody has parasites. So that's the American thing. So the CDC says that 1 out of every 2 people has a worm. Yeah, you probably have a parasite. Now, whether that'll show up in a stool test is a good question. So a lot of times they want to do 3 stool tests at 3 different times, and then you're more likely to find some eggs or find some like broken off debris of the parasites, or find living parasites in there like pinworms and stuff. But even if you do all 3 and it's still negative, you can still have parasites. So it ends up being kind of the same problem we have with Lyme disease, where the test doesn't really tell you whether you do or not, and so that leaves people very frustrated, especially when we have patients that are young and they have parents. The parents are just like, well, what do we do now? So what's the next test, next test? So what I typically really concentrate on is the therapy is way cheaper than the test, so just assume you have a parasite and do the treatment, and then you're solved, right? Because you're not going to take a test and be like, oh, I got a bunch more parasites. You just keep repeating that same test if you believe you have parasites. Hey, Gina, I'm glad you're attending here. Yeah, I know his jaw broke. So when I was moving him, he started to fall. I grabbed his jaw and it stretched out the things and broke his jaw off. So Bob's got no jaw, which he's a little bit quieter now, which is nice. And you're with Jackie, Deb, huh? You'll never sleep again? They're everywhere. All right. So back to testing. What the hell do you do? I mean, you know, if it's pinworms, it's pretty obvious. If you have worms that are actually coming out, you have a worm that's sticking out your butt. If you have that confetti worm shooting everywhere, right? So someone coughs and then poof, they shoot out. Yeah, that's pretty easy. But otherwise, you're probably better off just doing the parasite cleanse or just doing a parasite treatment. And just kind of like, like Brianna was saying with her Colombian daughter. Does she bring bricks of stuff back to the U.S.? So, just every year do it. So probably every 6 months you probably want to do it, you know? Just do an anti-parasitic cleanse every 6 months, because the assumption is you have parasites. Alright, so Jackie says, if people aren't reading the comments you are talking about, breaking someone's jaw is kind of crazy sounding. Yeah, I know. That's true. They didn't pay their bill. Sometimes you gotta get rough with patients sometimes, right? And break their jaw. So no, that was Bob the skeleton. Okay, so symptoms can be anything. So again, just like Lyme or pretty much any other condition where it's very vague, they just have all these vague symptoms that, oh my God, that fits everybody. So much like in grad school when we're going through every disease, all the symptoms are these vague symptoms. And by the end of class, you're just like, I have cancer and lupus and Sjogren's and diabetes and all these things, because it's such a vague thing. So we can't really go off symptoms very well. We can't really go off testing all that well. The assumption is that everybody has parasites anyways. So let's just talk about how to just treat parasites. And what I love about it is really parasitic treatment throughout the world is very cheap. It's a very cheap thing, very easy thing. So I'll tell you about one case. We had a patient once that had eosinophils really high. So the assumption was that they had parasites. Also, if you're with family members, they probably have the parasites too. So everybody in the house was willing to do this treatment. And what we did was, I love like green medicine from like Duke, not David Duke. That's wrong kind of medicine. I can't remember his name, Duke something. But I have several of his books. But I love it because it talks about like, here's how we historically have done these things. to the point where it's just like go out in the yard and get, lamb's quarters and do this to it, or pine needles. I love that kind of old school natural medicine approach to that. So basically, what it said is take was it 6 to 8 ounces of carrot juice, and with I believe it's 2 cloves of garlic, and you puree it up and you drink it every 2 hours while you're awake for 3 days. And that will kill all the parasites. Even carrots are anti-parasitic, which is nice. So that's one way. That's one way we've done it. It's not my typical way to do it, but it was very effective. So then we retested his basic blood work. His eosinophils came back negative, like they were just normal, right? So we proved our point. Could it be parasites? Well, here's a $10 test or a $20 test instead of a $300 test, which may or may not be true. And then we do the treatment, which is a dirt stinking cheap, and then we retest with that cheap test, and we found that obviously it worked. So that's great. Everybody in the family did it. The dad was not so happy with doing garlic for 3 days, but it worked out. So there's that. So there is carrot juice with garlic. I think it's 2 cloves of garlic, and then it's carrot juice. Yeah, Brianna, so she asked, what if you drink that and then you immediately throw up? Probably shit, it's gross. That's might be a normal response as opposed to an abnormal response. Garlic, carrot juice, it's not normal. So yeah, it might make you throw up. It's not very copacetic. All right. Then we have papaya seeds. Now, papaya seeds are really good. Tropical medicine, they use papaya seeds all the time. Has like a little bit of peppery kind of taste to it. So when you eat papaya, you should be eating those papaya seeds. They're true actual medicine. The same thing's true with grape seeds and apple seeds and orange seeds. Chew those bad boys up because it's medicine. Grape seeds are antihistamines, which then knocks down inflammation. And so we just spit those out, but we really should be eating those things. Suzanne says, are there capsules for parasite elimination? And absolutely. So papaya seeds in that Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Medicine, they did a study, and it was curative 23 out of 30 times. So it was very, very effective. Now, going back to Suzanne's question, the most common treatment for parasites in the U.S. is black walnut tincture. And so and you can make this stuff at home. You take those green walnut husks, and not the black walnuts, right? They're inside of that. But you get the walnuts when they're green with that big ball around there, and it tastes really bitter, right? You take those and you fill up a crock pot with those in there, pour vodka in there, take a few drinks yourself, right? And then fill the rest with vodka. Then you put a cover over the top, and you let it sit for a couple weeks. All those anti-parasitic chemicals are now infused in that alcohol, and then you pour off that alcohol into a container, and you have black walnut tincture. So if you were out in the wild, there's a great book. I have a book called When Technology Fails, and it's a course I teach at college. And it's basically, here's how you survive when everything fails. And the lone solution in there that they have for parasites is black walnut tincture. Dirt, stinking cheap to make, very easy to make. Walnuts everywhere in the U.S. So, very, very easy. And you can just buy that as a tincture if you want. And basically, you just kind of want to fish the bottle out, do it twice a year, and you're good. Now, Jess has a question. Do the carrots and garlic need to be juiced? So the carrots, yeah, you really want it juiced. So you want instant absorption, all that kind of stuff. And then the garlic, pressed is fine. And basically, juice the carrots, put the garlic in there, blend it up, is what we did before. That's kind of the standard. So black walnut tinctures kick ass. But also wormwood tincture is another one that's very, very efficient. And it does basically the same thing, and it's from wormwood, which is the same thing that was used in absinthe, which absinthe, they say, will make you hallucinate, all this stuff, but really, it was that they started using methanol instead of ethanol, which then was toxic, and then people started having neurological problems, and they had all this kind of euphoria and stuff, and getting sick and dying, and then they banned absinthe, but it was only because they put toxic neurological chemicals in there, as opposed to the ethanol, which it's just a drink with wormwood, so it's fine. So if you drink absinthe, you actually have wormwood in there, so that's pretty good. And then cloves are pretty cool because they'll actually kill the eggs. And Dan, thanks for posting that too. So clove kills the eggs. It'll dissolve those eggs. And one of the things that you want to do is those parasites are dumping out millions of eggs a night. So you want to be able to kill and dissolve those eggs. So a really, really good combination would be black walnut tincture, wormwood tincture with clove. And those are readily available. You can buy those pretty much from any health food store, and they'll be in one thing, and you have two things that kill the worm, one thing that kills the eggs, and so it becomes really a great therapy for you. And it's fairly inexpensive too. Now, we talked about for lice, we said permethrin or pyrethrin. Permethrin is actually the essential oil from chrysanthemum flowers. It's non-toxic, but it'll kill ants and fleas and ticks and parasites. And you probably wouldn't want to consume that, but you could spray it on your animals and give them a little permethrin bath, and that'll kill all those mites, and it'll kill all the other parasites and fleas and ticks in there too. And it does it not out of toxicity, but those species don't have blood vessels. And if you don't have a blood vessel, you can't compensate from sudden dehydration. And when that chrysanthemum oil gets on the skin or the exoskeleton, it sucks water out, which instantly causes them to die because they can't compensate for blood pressure. So permethrin is awesome. I bought this years ago for controlling ants at our house, and I've only used like a teeny tiny amount of it. So buy a small bottle of it, and you mix it with a whole bunch of water, but you can give your dogs or cats a bath with that, or your kids. Now that's Rid, right? Or Rid. We also mentioned diatomaceous earth. That's also kind of a gold standard for internal parasitic control for animals, for yourself too. So diatomaceous earth is pretty inexpensive. It's just diatoms. Spell it out, huh? You know I was educated in Texas. We're 45th. Okay, so it's diatom, D-I-A-T-O-M, and then it's A-C-E-A U-S, I believe. So diatomaceous earth, or you might D-E or something like that. But diatomaceous earth is from diatoms. And diatoms are like little crustaceans from the dinosaur days, right? And what they do is they crush them down, and for you, when you feel it, it feels like flour. Hey, Brianna spelled it. Look at that. You can get it from the hardware store, like Ace Hardware, surprisingly. But make sure you get food grade. But to you, it feels like flour. But to parasites and to ticks and fleas, it's like razor blades cutting them up. So it's great for the ingestion, so it'll go through and kill parasites. But people use it for feeding their chickens. They put it in their dog food, cat food. They can get flea baths with it, or they can put it all in the bedding. You put it around the house. And that way, basically, you have a constant way of killing off the fleas and ticks that harbor parasites. So diatomaceous earth. Oh, I had it written here. What am I? I'm trying to do it from memory. Katina, and I had it right there. So, see that? Now, one really good thing. So we talked about like ringworm is a parasitic infection. That's a fungus. one of my best cases, I had a woman that had it on her leg, and it was really horrendous. Like, it looked just like the worst case I've ever seen. So, since it's a fungus, we used a base of coconut oil because it's antiviral, antifungal, anti-yeast, antiviral. And then we used oregano oil, and oregano oil is a very, very, very potent microbiotic. And so basically it kills viruses and parasites and fungus and yeast and all that. So basically she just walked around smelling like a freaking pizza all the time, which probably helped her make more friends at work, honestly. I mean, that's what women should use, is like like pizza, like a little marinara, like rub it here and here. Or bacon. Bacon and marinara. I bet that'd be awesome. But who has trouble attracting guys, right? Guys should wear perfume so that they attract women with like smells. Maybe. So, oregano oil. You want the oil because it's concentrated. So it'll be like 6,000 pounds of oregano compressed and distilled into 1 pound of oil. So it's highly therapeutic at that rate. And oh my God, so we took pictures, and the fungal infection looked really angry. That was our best description of it. And then, and someone just asked if the diatomaceous earth is for animals or humans. It's for both. It just needs to be food grade. But the fungal infection looked really ugly and angry, and it was on her for years. And then we put that oregano oil on there, and then, like, I think it was a couple days later, it was just like the line on the outside was a little bit lighter. And then next week it was a little bit lighter. And then the whole thing started pinking up just a little bit. And then we started seeing it just really dying off. And then after, I don't know, a couple months, it was perfectly normal. So she had this ringworm forever that was just untreatable, and oregano oil with a little base of coconut oil was perfect. Yeah, that's about right these days. Coconut oil for everything. Now, coconut oil is not anti-inflammatory, but it is antiviral, yeast, fungal, all that stuff. So it's good. That takes us to things like grapefruit seed extract. So, grape seed extract, we talked about before, as that's a proanthocyanidamide, so it's antihistamine. So it's great for like cold, allergies, that kind of stuff, runny nose. You just take grapes, and you would just eat the grapes with the seeds, and you'd have antihistamines. But we don't like the seeds, so they took the seeds out, so now we have to buy grape seed extract for that. Same thing with grapefruit seed. We won't eat the seeds, so then we have to buy the seeds. So that's crazy. So now when I eat grapefruit, I like bite those seeds. Grapefruit seed extract is antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. But really what's interesting is one of our really tough cases for allergies, seasonal allergies, we use grapefruit seed extract, which is not my typical go-to, but you always have to kind of be fluid with your treatment. And it worked beautifully for that patient. So all her lingering things that we couldn't get rid of all went away with that. So I'm a big proponent of grapefruit seed extract now. But when I eat grapefruits, I chew those seeds up. Edna, that's a good point. So oregano oil is very hot. Like, I put that in my throat before when I had really horrible infection. And oh my God, that burns the hell out of you. But I was super tough, so I was okay. Probably not so much for people, other people to do. So that's why diluting that or putting a base of coconut oil on is really good idea. So even when we use, like, if we want to get rid of moles or these brown spots or something like that, we always do a coconut oil around the rim, and then we put the actual treatment on there. So that way we don't burn the skin. Like, even if we use apple cider vinegar, which is surprisingly phenomenal for getting rid of moles and lesions like that. Then we have garlic and onions, and really that should be the staple of the diet, like mirepoix, garlic, onions, celery, and carrots should be the base of all our food, but we don't really do that. Probiotics, that is, of course, awesome because you have 750 different species of bacteria that are good, and Harvard says that you have more bacterial cells than you have human cells, so for every 1 human cell, you have 10 bacterial cells taking care of you. So the vast majority of all bacteria is good bacteria. And what they do is they actually literally kill parasites, but they also box them out. So if your body's lined with good bacteria, there's no place for the bad bacteria or the parasites to go. Pineapples, that tends to be another tropical medicine treatment. You really want the core of the pineapple, not the outside. The outside's really good, but the core is really where the concentrated bromelain or proteolytic enzymes are. And those enzymes directly kill tapeworms. And as you remember right, 1 out of 2 people have tapeworms. Pumpkin seeds, just like papaya seeds, are very anti-parasitic. And the pumpkin seeds actually paralyze the worm. So it's a good kind of collaborative treatment where we use pumpkin seeds and then we use wormwood or black walnut tincture or something like that. And what they do sometimes is they'll do pumpkin seeds that paralyze them, lots and lots of water and fluid to flush them out. Hopefully you can get like a 38-footer instead of record. That's what I'm hoping for. And then we talked about the garlic and carrot juice. So that's kind of like where we're at. I mean, there's lots more, but really, you just really need a handful of things where the 1 or 2 staples that work every time. So like the clove plus black walnut tincture plus wormwood, that should do like 99%. But you'll always have those patients that doesn't work on. So then you got to do that extra little thing. And so that's where it's nice to have a good natural medicine cabinet of all these options for you. So if one thing doesn't work, another thing will. Or hell, just eat a lot more papaya seeds and bromelain and do the tincture and just like hit it every which way. And just know that once you get it cured, you'll probably get it again because you live in America. And whoever you're kissing is 50% likely to have those parasites. So you're spreading parasites. And letting the dog like lick in your mouth and stuff. They lick their butt, right? They lick their butt, cats lick their butt, and then they lick you inside your mouth, and they're spreading parasites. That's why I don't make out with my cat anymore. I think she's trying to kill me. Alright, so as we finish up here, as you guys have more questions, feel free to post those, and I'll try to answer all those that I can. Last time we had lots of good feedback, so that was kind of nice. We had some crazy tangential things going on, but it was pretty good. Also, make sure you share this, make sure you like it. I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope this information helps you. If you guys have if you guys have friends or family that really need help, that aren't getting help, they can always schedule a consult with me too. And again, I'm usually the last person that people see because most things are reversible, most things are easily treatable, but that's not how we address most things. The other thing is the next topic. So as we finish up here, if you guys have ideas for the next week's topic, let me know, and we'll kind of go through there and figure out. Oh, and Shauna, thank you. We'll go through and try to figure out some really good topics, and maybe we can find another special guest. Maybe we can infect somebody with parasites and then have them talk about how it affected their life. And last thing is the old videos. So there's like 70-something shows. If you go to my Facebook and go to video, or go to more, then go to videos, then it goes to my videos, then there's like 70 different videos on there. And so we've talked about all kinds of stuff. And the show, the Dr. G show, has kind of transitioned several times through this. Really just kind of figure out what you guys like and what you guys need and what works. So, I didn't have many bad jokes on this one. That's why we need a co-host, so that I can sit there and tell bad jokes. Bob doesn't care anymore. He doesn't have a jaw. He can't even laugh. Alright. Thank you guys. And can't wait to see you guys next week. Alright. Bye-bye.